At 50, Julia Roberts, America's eternal pretty woman, finally broke her silence, and the names she allegedly revealed were enough to send tremors through Hollywood's glittering halls. For decades, she was the smile that charmed audiences, the wholesome star who seemed untouchable. But behind that world-famous grin were scars carved by some of the most powerful people in the industry, people she once trusted with her career, her heart, and her reputation. "They thought my silence meant I had forgiven them," Julia said in a rare candid moment. "I didn't. I was just waiting." The woman who had embodied fairy tales on screen was now ready to tell the real story, one laced with ambition, manipulation, and betrayal. The first was a legendary director she once admired. The second, a supposed sister-like friend. The third, a Hollywood mentor. The fourth, someone who managed her very image. And the last, the man she loved most. In the next hour, Julia would allegedly name each one: Steven Spielberg, Susan Sarandon's own PR mastermind, a mentor director who replaced her, a once loyal publicist, and even George Clooney, explaining exactly why their actions were unforgivable. If you thought Hollywood's dirtiest script stayed on the screen, Julia's story will make you think again. Julia Fiona Roberts was born on the 28th of October, 1967, in Smyrna, Georgia, into a family that understood art but knew struggle all too well. Her parents, Betty Lou and Walter Roberts, ran a small acting workshop for children, but money was scarce, and a divorce fractured the family when Julia was just 4. Raised primarily by her mother, she learned early the quiet resilience of a woman who worked multiple jobs to keep the lights on. Julia arrived in New York with dreams as wide as the skyline. A few commercials and television spots later, she caught her first real break in 1988's Mystic Pizza. The role led to Steel Magnolias, which earned her an Oscar nomination. But it was 1990's Pretty Woman that changed everything overnight. She became Hollywood's most bankable actress. Throughout the 92nd and early 2002nd, she delivered hit after hit: My Best Friend's Wedding, Notting Hill, Runaway Bride, and Erin Brockovich, the latter earning her the Academy Award for Best Actress in 2001. On the surface, Julia had it all: fame, wealth, a perfect smile. But beneath the champagne toasts and red carpets was a much darker truth. Hollywood wasn't the family she once hoped it could be. It was an arena where friendships could be traded for opportunities and loyalty could evaporate with the promise of a better deal. Invasive tabloid coverage painted her personal life as fair game. Paparazzi followed her every move, and industry politics were a constant, silent pressure. She began to see the cracks: whispered betrayals, sudden cold shoulders, and deals made behind closed doors. And among the many battles she fought, there were 5 betrayals that never left her. Each came from someone she had once welcomed into her circle. Each reshaped the way she trusted. And each, as she tells it now, still lingers in the shadow of her career. The first name Julia names is perhaps the most shocking: Steven Spielberg, the man she once saw as a creative giant, a trusted leader, and the director who could turn any project into magic. They worked together on Hook, 1991, where Julia played the ethereal Tinkerbell opposite Robin Williams and Dustin Hoffman. At first, she was thrilled. Spielberg was, after all, one of the most respected figures in the industry. But filming quickly turned into a nightmare. The press began to circle with whispers of Julia being difficult on set, dubbing her Tinkerhell. She was battling personal challenges at the time, including a very public breakup, and the pressure was immense. Instead of quashing the rumors, Spielberg allegedly let them breathe and, in some cases, fanned the flames. In one interview, when asked about working with her, he reportedly said, "It was an unfortunate time for us to work together," a statement Julia took as a public distancing, if not an outright betrayal. What cut the deepest was not the gossip itself, but Spielberg's silence when she needed him to stand by her. Behind the scenes, she believed a single strong word from him could have killed the diva narrative. Instead, she watched the label stick, casting a long shadow over her reputation for years to come. "I thought he was my captain," she later confided to a close friend. Turns out, when the ship hit rough waters, He was the first to lower the lifeboat for himself. For Julia, the lesson was searing. Even the most respected names in Hollywood could turn away when the spotlight became too hot. And for an actress whose livelihood depended on public perception, Spielberg's alleged failure to defend her wasn't just personal. It was professional sabotage. The second betrayal came not from a co-star herself, but from the person entrusted to shape her co-star's public image. In 1998, Julia starred opposite Susan Sarandon in Stepmom, a heartfelt drama about love, loss, and blended families. On screen, the chemistry between the two women was undeniable. Off-screen, they laughed together during press tours and seemed genuinely supportive of one another. Then, whispers began. Tabloid covers shouted about a bitter feud brewing between the two actresses. Headlines painted Julia as an insecure diva, jealous of Susan's gravitas, while Susan was portrayed as the dignified victim of Julia's alleged temper. For Julia, the rumors were baffling. She had no quarrel with Sarandon. Years later, the truth slipped out in an interview Susan gave. The so-called feud had been manufactured, and the culprit, she revealed, was her own publicist. The PR strategist had allegedly planted stories of tension to drum up attention for Stepmom, using the manufactured rivalry as free marketing. It worked. The film became a box office success, but at Julia's expense. What stung wasn't just the deception, but the calculated way her reputation had been weaponized without her consent. For years after, the feud narrative clung to her name, resurfacing in gossip columns whenever a new project came out. Even after Susan's admission, Julia couldn't help but feel the damage was permanent. "I could accept a competitor," Julia once remarked privately, "but I can't accept being turned into a villain just to sell tickets." The experience left her wary of Hollywood's publicity machine, not just the tabloids, but the unseen handlers pulling strings behind the scenes. And in her mind, this betrayal wasn't just a personal slight, it was a masterclass in how even friendship could be staged, scripted, and sold. The third betrayal came from a man Julia had once described as visionary director Joel Schumacher. Known for his eclectic style and ability to turn out both blockbuster hits and intimate dramas, Schumacher had been a trusted figure in her career circle since the early 92nd. He'd praised her talent publicly, championed her for roles, and seemed genuinely invested in her artistic growth. In the early 2000s, fresh off her Erin Brockovich Oscar win, Schumacher allegedly approached Julia with a script for a psychological thriller he claimed was tailor-made for her. The two spent months in creative talks, fine-tuning the role and discussing how it could redefine her career yet again. She cleared her calendar, turning down other projects to be ready when cameras rolled. But just weeks before the official announcement, the trades broke the story. Schumacher had cast a much younger actress in the role, one who had recently signed a multi-picture deal with a studio Schumacher was courting. Julia wasn't just replaced, her name was erased entirely from the project's development history, as if she'd never been involved. Industry insiders whispered about creative differences, but Julia knew the truth. It was about age, marketability, and the studio's hunger for a fresher face. What cut deeper was discovering that her name had been used in pitch meetings to secure financing, only for the role to be dangled as bait and then yanked away. When a mutual acquaintance asked Schumacher why he'd made the change, he allegedly replied, "She's had her moment. This is about the future." For Julia, it wasn't just a lost role, it was the shattering of a mentorship she thought was real. And it was yet another reminder that in Hollywood, loyalty often has an expiration date. The fourth betrayal came from someone Julia had trusted to guard her image, as fiercely as a bodyguard protects a life-legendary Hollywood publicist, Pat Kingsley. Known for shaping the careers of A-list stars like Tom Cruise and Denzel Washington, Kingsley was a master at controlling narratives and keeping damaging stories out of the press. For years, Julia believed Pat was her shield. She handled crisis PR with surgical precision and was privy to Julia's most personal fears, vulnerabilities, and the details of her private life that could destroy her if ever made public. But in the mid-2000s, small, unsettling coincidences began to surface. Stories Julia had shared only in confidence, intimate anecdotes about her relationships, tensions with certain co-stars, Even exact phrases she'd used in private conversations started appearing in gossip columns. At first, Julia thought it was just bad luck, or perhaps a loose-lipped friend. But as the pattern grew clearer, a former industry insider whispered the unthinkable. Kingsley was allegedly trading selective inside information to certain outlets in exchange for favorable press for her other clients and strategic relationships in the media. The final straw came when a major tabloid splashed a cover story about Julia's marriage, quoting lines Julia recognized word for word from private conversations with her publicist. It wasn't a leak from an enemy, it was a betrayal from within her own fortress. When confronted, Kingsley didn't apologize. According to a person close to the situation, her response was chillingly pragmatic. "It's not personal, Julia. This is business. You control the story, or the story controls you." Julia walked away from their professional relationship soon after, but the damage was done. The betrayal wasn't just the loss of a publicist, it was the realization that in Hollywood, even the person holding your crown might already be polishing their own knife. The last name Julia reveals is one that stings on a different level: George Clooney. To the public, Clooney and Roberts were the picture of Hollywood camaraderie, playful banter in interviews, effortless chemistry in Ocean's 11 and Ocean's 12, and a friendship that seemed immune to the industry's usual fractures. Julia often referred to him as family, a rare male colleague she could truly trust. That trust was shaken in 2024, when Clooney made headlines with a widely circulated op-ed urging President Joe Biden to step down from the presidential race. While politics may seem far removed from Julia's personal life, behind the scenes, it hit closer than anyone realized. According to an alleged insider, Julia felt blindsided not by Clooney's political opinion, but by the fact that he used their long-standing friendship in private conversations to lend weight to his position without ever warning her that he'd be going public. To Julia, it wasn't about the politics, it was about being leveraged. She reportedly feared that the op-ed would invite speculation about her own political leanings, dragging her into a divisive national debate she had no intention of entering. In a town where image is currency, being even indirectly tied to such a polarizing move could cost roles, brand deals, and goodwill with segments of the audience. But what cut deepest was the personal aspect. She had stood by Clooney through his own media storms, defending him when rumors swirled, never once exploiting his name for her own benefit. And now, when one of the biggest political statements in Hollywood was dropped into the headlines, she learned about it like everyone else by reading it. When Julia confronted him, the conversation was reportedly tense. Clooney brushed it off as nothing personal, telling her, "I just did what I thought was right." To Julia, that was exactly the problem. He had decided what was right for him, without any regard for how it might affect her. Looking back, she describes the moment as a turning point. "I can forgive ambition," she allegedly told a confidant. "I can forgive gossip, but I can't forgive the person who uses trust as a bargaining chip." In her mind, the betrayal was clear. This wasn't just about politics or Hollywood games, it was about friendship. And the realization that even the people you'd bet your life on might be playing a completely different game. Today, Julia Roberts stands as a woman who no longer hides behind the sheen of Hollywood perfection. The girl from Smyrna who became America's sweetheart has lived long enough to see how fragile the word trust really is in an industry built on appearances. The betrayals she's carried are not whispered grudges. They are lessons burned into her memory. She insists her decision to speak isn't revenge. "I'm not here to take anyone down," she says, her voice even but resolute. "I'm here because I've learned that silence doesn't protect the right people. It protects the wrong ones." The 5 names she's revealed: Steven Spielberg, Susan Sarandon's PR machine, Joel Schumacher, Pat Kingsley, and George Clooney, allegedly each left a different scar. Some wounds closed quickly. Others still ache when she sees their faces on a screen or in a headline. But the common thread is clear. They all changed how she moves through the world. Her famous smile, once a shield to deflect criticism, is now something else entirely, the expression of a woman who knows exactly who she is, and exactly who no longer has power over her. "I forgave myself," she says simply. "But not them. Never them." For anyone who has been betrayed by those they trusted most, her message is a reminder. You do not owe your forgiveness to those who turned your trust into their advantage. Which of these 5 betrayals shocked you the most? Was it the silence of Steven Spielberg? The manufactured feud from Susan Sarandon's PR machine? Joel Schumacher replacing her for a younger star? Pat Kingsley's alleged leaks? Or George Clooney's blindsiding move? Share your thoughts in the comments. We want to know which one hit you the hardest. If Julia's story resonated with you, remember there are countless untold truths hiding behind Hollywood's bright lights and red carpets. By liking this video, subscribing, and turning on notifications, you help bring more of those stories into the open. And in our next episode, we'll uncover the one woman in Hollywood Julia Roberts allegedly feared more than anyone else and the secret that kept her silent for over 2 decades. You won't want to miss it.